Shabbat, פרק 16, the 16th chapter, Mishnah א'. פרק זה דן בדלקה שנפלה בשבת. This chapter deals with fire on Shabbat. ואמרו בגמרא, and this is, Gemara has a saying, שאסרו חכמים להציל מפני הדלקה בשבת. The sages says, you're not allowed to save your property because of fire on Shabbat. Why? What's the problem? We're not discussing taking... Okay, so let's just discuss in the beginning. To take from Reshut HaYachid לרשות הרבים, that's of course not allowed. You're breaking Shabbat. We're talking about a concept called over here Eruvin. We didn't deal with it at all. We didn't deal with Eruvin yet. Eruvin is when you have a courtyard, you have like the houses in the old time used to be completely different than ours. The father would build a house, one house like this. Then he would have children, his children would get married, they would build the house over here. Now the second child would get married, they would build the house over here. Third child would get married, they build the house over here. And they would share, there was a courtyard in between. Now, in the shared courtyard, between the houses to the courtyard, between courtyard back to the houses, you have to make an eruv. You're not allowed just to carry. The eruv is from the Rabbanan. So they tell you, you have a fire in your house. You're not allowed to take property from your house into the courtyard if there's no eruv. That's the idea. אסרו חכמים להציל מפני הדלקה בשבת. It says, the sages says you're not allowed to save any of your property, even though maybe it's allowed. We're going to see soon. Maybe it's allowed. Gzera, it says, why are you not allowed to save your property? What's the idea? It says, the nature of a human being. What is the nature of a human being? He panics. There's fire, and he's panicking. You know, he's taking things out. Gzera, שמתוך שהאדם בהול על ממונו. Once he's starting dealing with things in the fire and he's taking the things out, ישכח שהוא שבת. It's in the middle. He's going to start doing what? Oh, it's burning. It's going to go something like this. It's going to be automatic because he's so amped up because of the fire. ישכח שהוא שבת ויבוא לכבות הדלקה. And he's going to come and extinguish the fire. Just let's take practically. Today, it's considered this whole thing with fire is, especially in the cities, also over here, it doesn't mean in my neighborhood. If there's a fire in one house, you call Mechabe Esh on Shabbat immediately because it goes from one house to the next house to the next house. It's dangerous. Yeah, we're talking about
a house like mine. If it burned by itself.
Even your house, I'm not sure. Even your house, I'm not sure. Can it cause to go to the next neighbor or not? Yeah, but you understand what the idea. Yeah. שמא יבוא ויחבר. ברם, יש דברים שחכמים התירו להציל. There are some things that the sages permitted to save. ובא פרקנו למד, ומה כיצד הוא מותר להציל. We're going to discuss how and what you're allowed to save. Number one, כל כתבי הקודש. All the holy books. Now, when it says the holy books, it doesn't mean Torah. Torah, of course. Holy books over here means nevi'im v'chtuvim. Like prophets, or even in our days...
Tanakh.
Yeah, Tanakh without the Torah. Yeah, the Nevi. In our days, I'm not sure what would the Gemara be called. When they say Kitvei HaKodesh in the time of the Gemara, they mean parchment. It was written on parchment. It has a little bit more of a holiness than just the regular paper, yeah. כל כתבי הקודש, תורה, נביאים וכתובים, הכתובים בלשון הקודש, that is written in Hebrew, yeah? מצילין אותם מפני הדלקה, that you're allowed to save them because in front of the fire. אם פרצה בשבת דלקה בבית, if there's fire on Shabbat in the house, או בחצר, or in the courtyard, והיו שם כתבי הקודש שלא נאחזה בהם האש עדיין, and there are parchments that they're not on fire yet, matzilim otam, because if they're on fire, you're going to extinguish it. But you're allowed to save them. ומוציאים אותם מן הבית או מן החצר. And you're allowed to take them out from the house or from the courtyard. Again, I don't know why Bartenura doesn't talk about it over here, but it doesn't mean to Reshut HaRabim. It means from the house to the courtyard, from the courtyard to the house, in a place where you didn't make an eruv.
When you have a...
When you didn't make an eruv.
Oh, you didn't?
You didn't make an eruv, but it's only the Rabbanan. Yeah, it's only the Rabbanan, the eruv.
ואתה מציל.
Yeah. בין שקוראים בהם. Oh. So the question is, we're going to see that there's such a thing on Shabbat that you're allowed to save things that you need for Shabbat. So it tells you over here, you'll be allowed to save things that you don't need in Shabbat also. Right? Things that you don't need in Shabbat. In other words, the Haftarah for this Shabbos, that's obvious that you're allowed to save because you need it for Shabbat. But what about the Chavakuk? You want to read Chavakuk. Yeah? בין שקוראים בהם, בין כתבי הקודש שקוראים בהם בשבת בציבור, whether you read them on Shabbat in the congregation, כגון תורה נביאים, ובין שאר שאין קוראים בהם, when other things that you don't read them, כגון כתובים, like the writings, שאין קוראים בהם בשבת. ואפילו יחידים, says, what do you mean you don't read them? I want to learn. I want to learn whatever book I want to learn. You can tell me what to learn? says, you're allowed to use it, don't worry, you're allowed to save it. ואף על פי, and you should know, שכתובים בכל לשון, that they are written in any language. Now, just to get the perspective, obviously they didn't have many languages. It talks about Greek. You remember, at that time, the people spoke Greek. Yeah, so that many of the translation was in Greek. So specifically, but it can be, in today's, it can be English, French, whatever language it is. ואף על פי שכתובים בכל לשון, ולא בלשון הקודש, even though they're written in any kind of language, and not even in Hebrew. ולדעת רבן שמעון בן גמליאל, according to רבן שמעון בן גמליאל, שהלכה כמותו, that the halacha is like it, אסור לקרות בהם אפילו בימות חול, you're not allowed to read them even in a regular day, וכן אין מצילים אותם מפני הדלקה, and also you don't save them from the fire. So it says, so what are we talking about? It says, מכל מקום, nevertheless, תאונים גניזה. There are things that you need to put into, you're not allowed to throw away. They have holiness into them, even though the rabbis are going to tell you, even though they're holy, you shouldn't be reading it. Even though it's such a holy, you shouldn't be reading it, but still, it needs to be buried. ואסור להניחם במקום הפקר. So even those things that you're not allowed to read, that the sage says don't read them, but you need to bury them, yeah, even those things you're allowed to take them because you need to bury them and now they're going to get burnt. Your mitzvah is gone. So I'm taking him out in order to do the mitzvah. That's the idea. ומפני מה אין קוראים בהם. Oh, this is an interesting. It says, why did they say you're not allowed to read them? So it's not that you're not allowed to read them ever. Rabban Shimon Gamliel there was a decree at that time. It's an interesting decree. Let's say if he explains it, if he doesn't, I'll explain it. בכתובים בשבת, מפני ביטול בית המדרש, because you wanted to make sure that people are going to come to shul. Learn in shul. That's the idea. Don't learn at home. I know you have it at home. Between this time and this time, you're not allowed to read it at home.
Oh, because they know the language, because they didn't know Hebrew.
Yeah.
So they do it in Greek and they stay home rather than to come to shul.
That's right.
I see.
But I don't know if it's going to explain it over here, I don't think it means the entire day. The entire day you're allowed to learn them. There's a time, or Bet HaMidrash over here, not shul. There's a time where you have classes in Bet HaMidrash, and the rabbis over there teaches. Okay. That time, don't say I'm going to stay home and read. No, you're not allowed to. Go to class. You have to go to class. We'll make you. Say, I want to read by myself at home. Not allowed to. Now, today, imagine today. Yeah, such a rule. Yeah.
My body.
Yeah. מפני ביטול בית המדרש. שכן, what happened? During the week, the people were working. They didn't have time to learn. It was a hard life. שכן בשבת היו חכמים דורשים לעם בבית המדרש. On Shabbat, the sages used to sit in the Beit HaMidrash, in the house of learning, and they used to give classes. ומורים להם הלכות בענייני איסור והיתר. They used to teach them the rules. We just learned the Rambam. The people didn't know. They were simple people. So it was the responsibility of the rabbi. It says, From the Chumash, he's not going to learn anything. I have to tell them, this is you're allowed to, this is you're not allowed to. ומוכיחים להם על עבירות שבידם. And they used to tell them, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong. Not only physical things, also spiritual things. ואילו היו מותרים לקרות בשבת בכתובים, if we would have given them permission to read on Shabbat all these writings, it looks like it's only on Shabbat over here he designated. But I think also in Shabbat, it's only, if I remember correctly from the Gemara, it's only in the time of those classes.
Right.
ואילו היו מותרים לקרוא בשבת בכתובים, היו נמנעים מלשמוע את הדרשה בית המדרש. They would never go to the house of learning to learn. והיו קוראים בכתובים. And they would read in those כתובים. הועיל והם דברים המושכים את הלב. Because there's interesting stories in them. והיל כך, אסרו חכמים לקרוא את הכתובים בשבת. There was a decree that the regular people are not allowed to read on Shabbat these things. Go to shul and learn something. Don't start learning interesting things, Kabbalos, interesting stories. No. Now it's time to know. That's right. שלא יבטלו את הדרשה בבית המדרש. So that they're not going to nullify the learning in the house of learning. It does say it. ודווקא בזמן הדרשה. It's specifically in the time of the learning. Yeah. אבל שלא בזמן הדרשה מותר להם לקרוא בגמרא. I remembered something. That it's not at the time of the things you're allowed to. Okay. Now, so you're allowed to save the Sefer Torah. What if the Sefer Torah comes in a small bag, in a small mantle, and of that there's got a small ark on it? Are you allowed to take now everything, the whole construct? There's a keter, there's a yad over there hanging on it. Are you allowed to carry the whole thing as a group out? That's the question. Matzilim tik ha-sefer im ha-sefer. You're allowed to save the whole box with the book together with the book, the whole conglomeration.
You don't have to take it out.
That's right.
Take the whole run.
That's right. כשמצילים ספר תורה מפני הדלקה, when you save a book of Torah from the fire, בשבת, on Shabbat, מותר להציל עמו גם את התיק שמונח בו. You're allowed to save everything that's in the cabinet that is inside. ותיק התפילין עם התפילין. And also the same thing with the tefillin. You're allowed to save your tefillin. And everything, the whole תיק inside. ותיק התפילין. וכן מותר להציל תיק התפילים עם התפילים שבתוכו. Even though you've got your wallet inside. And there's money inside. Don't worry about it. You're not saving the wallet. But what are you supposed now? To take the wallet out? You take the whole thing. ואף על פי שיש בתוכן מעות. Even though there's some money inside this bag. שבתוך התיקים מונחות מעות. That inside these books, inside the bags of the tefillin, you have money. מכל מקום מותר להציל הכל. Nevertheless, you're allowed to save the whole thing. ולהיכן מאצילין אותן? Now it comes. Where are you allowed to take them to? את כל אלו שהוזכרנו במשנתנו שמצילים אותם מהבדיקה, all these that you're allowed to take, obviously you're not allowed to take them from one domain to another domain because that's a prohibition from the Torah. But what the Rabbi says, we're also going to make prohibitions. But the prohibitions that we made for fire will allow you to take them out. And not all the prohibitions we made. Some of the prohibitions, let's say, למבוי שאינו מפולש. To a courtyard that is not open duch and duch. There's courtyards that are open duch and duch, you're not allowed to. But if the courtyard is not open, it's closed on three sides, so then from the houses to the courtyard, that will allow you to take it even though you didn't make an eruv. בגמרא מבואר, the Gemara it explains, למבוי שהוא סגור משלוש ריחותיו. This is a courtyard that is closed on three sides. וברוח הרביעית הפתוחה לרשות הרבים קבוע לחי. And in the fourth corner, they put a stick. Why did they put a stick? It's called a lechi. They put a stick to show that it's only on one domain. It all belongs to us. It's partnerships. In other words, we are all allowed to carry it. It almost makes it an in-between. It's not Reshut HaRabim, and it's not Reshut HaYachid. Why is it not Reshut HaRabim? Because the people from outside the Mavoi, outside from this neighborhood, are not allowed to be inside. But everybody in this neighborhood, for him it's Reshut HaRabim. But it's not really Reshut HaRabim, because Reshut HaRabim means anybody can come in.
Yeah.
It's Reshut HaRabim for a little bit of people. This is what,
People that live there.
that's what the stick says.
Uh-huh.
The stick says it's Reshut HaRabim for people who live here.
Who live here.
Yeah, and this becomes now. So the commentary says even in such a thing you need to make eruv chatzerot, but even if you didn't make, we allowed you. And some are going to say no. If you didn't make, we're not going to allow you. It's going to be probably a disagreement. שהואיל והוא ראוי לשיתוף, since the lechi made it, now they're all partners in this courtyard. אף על פי שלא נשתתפו בו, even though they did not make the eruv, there's no matzahs by one of them, they forgot to do it for whatever reason, they didn't do it. Yeah? מותר להצילו לתוכו, they're allowed to use it because everybody knows this is only for nobody else is allowed to go inside, it's their property, except ththese guys. It's like, okay. בן בתרא אומר, בן בתרא says, אף למפולש. I will allow them even if it's open duch and duch, both ways. Even if it's open both ways, when it's open both ways, it's tricky because it looks like other people have the permission to walk through. So if other people have the permission to walk through, what are you telling me it's not Reshut HaRabim? So he says, no. They only have permission to walk through. They don't have a permission for use.
To use.
Yeah, so it's like, over here they have such a thing. What is it called? Easement. It's an easement. Easement doesn't outtake it from being only our property. That's the question. Does the easement, the fact that there's an easement, does it mean?
Yeah, the easement belongs to usually to the neighbors, to the.
Yeah, over here the easement belongs to everybody. That's
to everybody in the neighborhood.
No, over here the easement belongs to the whole world.
Uh-huh.
It's not an easement that ends in a dead end. It's not a dead end easement. It's an easement that between this town and this town. There's a town of that side and there's a town on that side, and people walk through between. They have the highway. The highway is right in between, but they're not allowed to use the sides.
Exactly.
That's what Matera says. אף למבוי מפולש. כלומר, by the way, we're going to take that into Eruvin. There's two definitions of what's מבוי מפולש. We're going to get to Eruvin. Some definition says it's doch and duch, and some explanation of מבוי מפולש is exactly the same מבוי that we have before, but without the sign that it belongs only to this guy, without the lechi.
Without the lechi.
Yeah, we'll discuss it when we get to Eruvin. We'll discuss it more over there. Over here, Ben Betera, I think, is going to go according to the opinion that it's closed on three sides, but it doesn't have a lechi. That's what he calls מפולש. אף למבוי מפולש, כלומר שאין לו לחי ברוח הרביעית. That he doesn't have, you don't show that it only belongs to these guys. אלא פתוח הוא לגמרי, it's completely open. מותר להצילו לתוכו, but אין הלכה כבן בתרה. הלכה is not like בן בתרה. It says, no, if other people are walking through it, it's almost Reshut HaRabim. If we let you take into the courtyard, we allow you to take into Reshut HaRabim also, and that's going to be, no. Problem. Finished Mishnah Aleph.